so it's time for video number 2 in the spooky season spectacular. So this video is going to be doing movies starting with the letter F, G, H, I, and J. This video is going to contain spoilers, so just a heads up for these movies. If you haven't watched them before and you would like to watch them before you get some spoilers, just giving you a warning now. So to kick things off, I'm going to be talking about the movie Frozen. This is not the Disney one. This is they're stuck in a chairlift. Very, very bad things will happen. So this came out in 2010. It's 9 years old now. Around the time, it seems pretty popular, but I feel like it's kind of been missed over the years. It's easily one of my favorite horror movies that I have watched in the 10 decade, just because it's not someone that's after them to try and kill them. It's in a believable scenario, and I feel like part of the thing that scares me the most is I'm terrified of heights. So already, before anything super bad happens to them, I'm already freaking out because that's just not a situation I would want to be in. So the performances are pretty great in this. I really do enjoy the performances. So you've got Shawn Ashmore, Emma Bell, Kevin Zegers. So it's just the three of them in this chairlift. You won't think that's very exciting, but it's very great. For many reasons I will get into. I don't really like the first 20 minutes of the film just because it's basically building up to them going into the lift, and you know that's where it's leading to. Like, you have Joe and Dan, they're best friends, and Joe's kind of disappointed that Parker is there because Parker is Dan's girlfriend and she's just kind of tagging along to their tradition. So it's just a lot of awkward third wheeling comments, and Joe meets this girl who he wants to, catch up with, and like that's most likely not going to happen. So the first 20 minutes is just kind of filler space to make the movie a bit longer. But otherwise, the movie is really short in duration. It's 89 minutes. It doesn't really mess around with the storyline once it gets into the action. So, if you haven't seen it, they're away on this ski resort. They go in this chairlift. The park closes down, not realizing they're on the lift, and they get stuck up there. So already, ski resorts mainly work on the weekend and close during the week. So already they're in a pretty shit situation, being trapped up 50 feet in the air. The place is closed. They have a week to try and survive, one, the cold, which leads to frostbite, freezing to death, running out of food, dehydration, and then just in general, like, do we wait? Will someone come? Do we try and get down? So, a few different scenarios already that instantly pops into the audience's head. The most impressive thing about this movie is no soundstage or green screen or anything was used. They were literally 50 feet up in the air filming this. Which already I'm freaking out at that fact because I'm shit scared of heights. I can't imagine how the actual cast felt. There is an interesting foreshadowing that happens. When you first watch it, you're like, oh, this is just like a weird conversation that they're having. But it's actually foreshadowing about what is going to occur. So this is a massive spoiler. So Dan starts off by saying the worst way to die would be a shark attack. Not when a shark comes up underneath you, you don't see it. But when you're watching the shark come towards you and there's nothing you can do to escape it. So Dan is the one that gets taken by wolves. He literally watches these wolves come towards him, knowing he can't escape. And so it foreshadows his death. Parker talks about the worst way to die would be to burn alive. And she's the one that suffers from frostbite the most. Her hand gets attached to the pole, and she literally has to rip her skin away, and it burns from the cold. And they don't really talk much about how Joe is scared to die. He kind of references about jumping because they were talking about 9/11 at the time, about how desperate you must be to have to jump from the building to escape the fire. And at some point, all three of them have to make that jump. And so I think it's just really great foreshadowing, really great storytelling. And just the deaths are pretty brutal. Mainly just with Dan. As I said, he gets eaten by wolves. They don't really show it, but listening to it is just horrible. I absolutely hated listening to it. It freaks me out when I first watched this movie in 2010. So I really enjoyed what they did with the characters, but that death just did kind of traumatize me. I enjoy the characters because they are emotionally relatable. They're freaking out about the heights, they're freaking about what they would do. Like, that's all relatable. And then when Dan dies, Joe's obviously upset because he just lost his best friend from life. Parker's extremely upset because she has lost her boyfriend. So the characters are relatable. You relate to their guilt, you relate to their desire to survive, and just it's just relatable. So I feel like that's the most important thing from this horror movie. Not only is it super gory and just the constant we are not going to survive this dread feeling, the characters are really relatable, it's emotionally relatable, the storylines, like, it's possible that could happen. And just Frozen is one of my favorite movies, and if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend that you do. So the next movie I'm going to talk about is Ghost Ship. This came out in 2002, and while it wasn't the best movie I ever watched at the time, I was 11 when I watched it, the opening scene completely traumatized me because they are on this ghost ship, this wire breaks and just decapitates or cuts people in half. And it's just one of the most traumatizing things I saw when I was 11. I kept watching the movie, and from what I remembered at the time, I enjoyed it, but I could not rewatch that first scene at such a young age. So now that I've rewatched it, I have such appreciation for the cinematography, the makeup team, the special effects team. They did such a great job filming it, but it is a really traumatizing scene to watch at a young age. The performances in this are pretty basic. The characters aren't anything extraordinary, but the deaths are pretty gory. So if you're going to the horror film, you basically want interesting death scenes, you want interesting story, you don't really care too much about the performances, because at the end of the day, going to a horror movie, you know most of them are going to die. So what you get from the performances are enjoyable. It was really awesome to see Karl Urban in like the early experiences of his career. It was really great to see Desmond Harrington back in this after I know more of his work now. And he's actually another movie I'm going to be reviewing later on in the month. The other cast, like, they're enjoyable. Emily Browning was probably like the standout that I remembered the most, just because she was such a young age when she did this film, and she just did a really great job. Ever since the new game called Man and Maiden come out, I played the game and it made me want to rewatch the movie. So it was great timing of watching the movie and wanting to do a review for it. When I first watched it, I did not see like the big reveal twist coming. I was so very surprised of what was happening. And then now rewatching at older age, it was just so convoluted about how they came to this massive reveal, how they fit into the storyline. And while it was interesting reveal, it was something different, and it made it super dark of why like it was a ghost ship. It was just very convoluted and just a very mixed way of doing a story. The director, this was actually the last movie he directed. He's only done 2 movies, 13 Ghosts and Ghost Ship, and both of them, while seem to be cult classics, were kind of failures in a big way. So I feel like he's given up directing, but I actually really enjoyed both movies. So it's kind of sad that while they are probably getting more notice now they didn't at the time. So if you haven't seen Ghost Ship, I do recommend checking it out, but don't do it at a young age because the opening is traumatizing. The next film is House on Haunted Hill. Now this is the reboot. It's not necessarily a remake. So this one came out in 1999. I haven't seen the original, but I know that Geoffrey Rush's character wasn't necessarily meant to be him, but he looks so good with that look, they decide to keep going with it. So a lot of people do think it's a sequel or a remake, but really it's just a reboot. This was one of my favorite movies growing up. I saw this movie when I was at 8, and surprisingly it didn't traumatize me, even though it can be a bit creepy, but it's not necessarily gory. It's just a creepy film, so I enjoy it for the creepy aspect. I'm not actually sure why it didn't disturb me when I was 8, because it does have this creepy opening with the doctors, but I just love the cast so much. I think they did a great job. Geoffrey Rush is fantastic. Famke Janssen, Taye Diggs, Peter Gallagher, Chris Kenton, Ali Larter, and Bridget Wilson. I loved the whole cast in this film. I don't know what it is like compared to the original. I have been meaning to watch it, I just haven't got around to it. It's not that I don't like older movies, I just find it really hard to delve myself into the scary aspect when the special effects aren't that great. I've seen cutouts from how the skeletons look. I'm like I know that's kind of what you had to work with back then, but it's just a little ridiculous. But I really love House on Haunted Hill. There is a sequel now, Return to House on Haunted Hill, which isn't as great, but that one is super gory. So that one might be worth checking out as well. I just really liked the performances in this. I liked the storyline. I liked the creepy aspect. I like that they didn't rely on the gore or jump scares. And, of course, this introduced me to Marilyn Manson with his cover of Sweet Dreams. So I have to love the movie just for introducing me to such a great artist. So this brings me to my movie, which is Idle Hands. Now, this movie I don't find scary at all. I actually think it's more of a comedy than anything. There are some really gory parts in it, mainly when he's like cutting off his hand and microwaving it. So this came out in 1999. It's a very short duration, an hour and 32 minutes. You have the gorgeous Devon Sawa back in his young boyhood days. You've got Seth Green, Eldon Hansen, and Jessica Alba. So everyone's very young. They all look very 90s. It's a very 90s movie. You even have the band Offspring perform. So if you were born in the 90s, like, this is a great film. It's more of a horror spoof. It's not scary. There's an interesting lore behind the concept of an idle hand. There is great gore. There's not many jump scares. Pretty much everything that's happening, you can see it building. You can see what the hand is doing. So it's a comedy, funny stoner movie. Devon Sawa's character, basically he's just a lazy bum. So they basically say the idle hand, if you don't do anything, if you don't keep your hands busy, it'll be possessed by the devil. So his hand gets possessed and starts murdering people. And he has no idea this is happening. So he then discovers his parents dead, and he goes to his friends and goes, oh my god, like, this happens. And they're like, dude, it was you, you're the murderer. Like, he's like, no. And then while he's arguing, like, no, I'm not the murderer, his hand has then killed his best friends. And then they come back from the dead. So when I first watched it, I'm like, this is just absolutely mental. It's ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense. But watching it back now, like, it's just such a strange, funny, horror-ish movie that I just love. And I feel like not many people have seen it. It's really disappointing. And I just really want people to go and check out this movie. I feel like if it came out now, or they did like a remake of it, like it would have such a more interesting following, just because of the humor. It reminds me so much of like the meme humor now. So definitely give this movie a check if you haven't seen it. And another movie the last movie I'm going to talk about, when it originally came out, it did very badly, but now it has a massive cult following. So I feel like if they released it now, it would have done 100 times better. And this movie is Jennifer's Body. So this movie came out in 2009, so this is 10 years ago now. And it stars Megan Fox, which she was huge at the time, and Amanda Seyfried. So they're both really popular at the time, but are probably even bigger now. You've got appearances by Adam Brody, Chris Pratt, Johnny Simmons, J.K. Simmons. So it has a great cast, but the movie just did not get the attention it deserved back then. And I feel like it's because it was just too early for its time. Like, the great dialogue, one-liners it has, just the ridiculous plot and the ridiculous kind of characters, especially like Megan Fox's character, Jennifer. She's this bisexual, and it's great representation of this character. And she moves on to her friend, and like it's a great kind of dynamic with their relationship. It is great representation of the bisexual orientation. It is great representation of just kind of the millennial humor that we now have, but it came out too early. So I feel like it is so much more popular now than it ever was, and if it was released now, it would have been super successful. So it is really disappointing that it wasn't successful back then when it should have been. Because the first time I watched it, I'm like, oh, like it's good, but I'm just not that into it. And now rewatching it, I'm like, this would be so good released now. Like, it just suits our humor, and the dialogue. The movie is not overly gory, so it's good for most ages. Like, you're not going to get traumatized if you watch it at a young age. It's not too gory. The makeup and fake blood was just incredibly done well. The performances are great. The characters are pretty standard for everyone. Like Jennifer, like Megan Fox does an incredible job of her. And I'm really disappointed that it was classified as a shit movie back in the day, but it would have been really good now. And I just feel like they miss that great time. It also reminds me a lot of the movie Ginger Snaps. So that came out in 2000, I believe. It was basically one of the girls becomes a werewolf. I think it was her sister tries to help her, and then at the end, she actually takes over being the bad one. So this relates to that, as if the good one, in this case Amanda, tries to stop Megan, and then she does, but she ends up becoming the evil one at the end. So this movie comes in full circle. It reminds me so much of Ginger Snap. So if you haven't seen this movie and you were thinking about checking it out, but you love Ginger Snaps, like that's a good thing to kind of check it out in that similarity. Yeah, so my biggest thing with this movie, it's a very simple plot. Her character basically gets possessed by this succubus. She goes around killing men. It's a very, very simple storyline. It's a very short duration. It gets to the point pretty quick. So, like, the storyline isn't extraordinary, but, like, the dialogue, the characters, the performances, like, it makes it that movie, and I just really think it would have done so much better if it came out now. So, to recap, you've got the movie Frozen, where they are stuck in chairlifts. Ghost Ship, they're obviously stuck on this ghost ship and being, like, hunted by ghosts, or kind of each other, I guess. House on Haunted Hill. The whole process is you survive the night, you'll get $1 million. And they don't really believe it's haunted, but obviously it is. And it's just, it has that interesting story. Idle Hands is a possessed hand going around killing people. And Jennifer's Body is, she's basically a succubus going around killing people. So you have a very different dynamic of movies here. I love every single one of them for very different reasons. Out of the 5, House on Haunted Hill is probably one of my favorites. Just because I probably watched it the most, but Frozen and Idle Hands are still definitely standouts. So thank you again for watching. Let me know below what your favorite movies are, starting with F, G, H, I, and J. Let me know below what you think of these movies. Let me know what movies you are hoping are coming in the rest of the alphabet. My next video will hopefully be Subterra, which is the board game. I was hoping to do it for this video, but plans just got changed. So thank you, of course, for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and my next video will be up in a week. So I'm hoping to do the spooky series every Monday and Tuesday, and then normal videos kind of Friday, Saturday, if I see new releases at the time.